All right, I'm going to tell you about an investment from hell. It's in a city in upstate New York. I won't tell you the city specifically because I don't want to say the whole city is bad, but there are a lot of people that I did meet and talk with that great people in this community, and I did not want to, you know, talk bad about the city. What intrigued me about this investment is that it was very reasonably priced. It was a duplex, and they already had a tenant in there. The other unit was vacant. So I was like, oh, I'm going to get instant income from the property, and it's already reasonably priced. I paid cash for it. So I was thinking that this was a great value. I knew I was going to have to get a property manager to manage it. All of the properties I have in Virginia, of course, I manage it myself. So I was I knew I was going to have to at least do that, but that was fine. I wasn't used to that, but I thought because this was a bargain, it wasn't going to be too big of a deal. Okay, so now on the property, my first hurdle was finding a property manager because this was a very small community. It was very difficult to find a property manager, so I had to do a lot of research trying to figure out a good property manager for the area. Once I found a good property manager or found a property manager that I thought would be good, we had issues after the first month because almost all of my money went to the property manager. I didn't get any of the income because they were saying things were wrong or something needed to be fixed. And I was like, okay. The second and third month were okay. And at that time, I was adamant about getting someone in that second unit. Now, I did not understand originally why we couldn't find anyone for the property until I found out later from the city that actually the other tenant was a hoarder. So that was the other hurdle that I went through. So they were a hoarder, and because they were a hoarder in some of the shared spaces, there was the items and furniture and storage of the other tenant. And this tenant to me was somewhat ideal on paper because it was a Section 8 property, so it was like a guaranteed income in my head. But all guaranteed income is not that great because you may have expenses that you don't think about. So we had to really get after that tenant to remove all of their items from the property. Now, on top of this, as I mentioned, this is upstate New York. We're now in the winter time, and I talked in previous videos about lowering expenses. I did miss the expenses of snow removal. So it's really important to think about those things when you talk about the different climates. If you're purchasing properties in different climates that you live in, to really understand the climate, to understand your expenses. So I had snow removal almost monthly, and it wasn't cheap. So keep that in mind too. And again, this was a property that I could not get that second unit occupied yet. So I was running on a one partial income, 50% of the income that I received from the property for the expenses. In that process, also in my insurance to insure the property said, oh, I'll need to get a new roof to keep the insurance on the property. And I'm like, what? So, in my head, I'm like, oh my goodness, this property is already, putting me in the hole because, of these monthly expenses. I can't get the other unit occupied. And on top of that, my insurance is going to drop me if I don't update the roof. So I said, okay, of course, getting a new roof is not cheap, especially in upstate New York. And it was a pretty penny to do that. So I did find a contractor down there that would actually do the work. The second day that he was on duty working on the roof, he got a citation that he was not like safely harnessed. It's one of the laws about safety, and he didn't have the right equipment on or something like that. So he was fined, on that. And I'm like, it just seems like it's always something. And then I get a letter from the fire department, and there's a rule. And this is crazy because I've never heard of this. Okay. So in this regulation, if you have a vacant unit or building of the building is vacant, you would need to submit a vacant building registration form. Now, my property manager failed to inform me about it. So if I have a building or part of a building that has been vacant for more than 30 days, I have to, I'm in violation if I do not have a vacant building registration. So part of it is I have to submit a vacant building plan to say if I'm going to demo or I'm going to continue the vacancy, and therefore things I have to do to get it up to standards or rehabilitation. So I was in violation and was fined because I had a vacant unit that my property manager couldn't fill. So that was another thing that I'm like, oh my goodness, it's something else. And so I was just really fed up at this point. And then I'm like, listen, hey, let's, whatever it needs to happen, do we need to update the building? So I update the unit a little bit to see if I can get some people in there. And I also was able to get the tenant upstairs to remove a lot of their things. So I was really excited. So now I have my property manager has this maintenance guy, and the maintenance guy's like, hey, I got all of these issues that need to be fixed. And I'm like, I haven't had any income from this property like coming in, and everything always needs to be fixed. So I'm like, what needs to be done? I'm looking for detailed information, and it just seems like some weird stuff, and it's mainly in the vacant property. And I'm like, kind of frustrated. And then the maintenance guy calls me on the side and like, look, I can do this a lot cheaper. He finds me on Facebook and FaceTimes and Facebook Messenger, FaceTime me, whatever. And it's like, hey, I can do all of these things and da da da. And I'm like, okay, that's perfectly fine. And then I'm like, at this moment, I'm thinking I'm getting scammed. So I'm at this moment not trusting the maintenance guy or the property manager in general. So I'm like, you know what? I need to get a new property manager. Now, I want you to go to part two because I'm going to talk about how the Ku Klux Klan came about. So go to part two, make sure you subscribe so you can get the next video.